now ourselves in our standing orders deny Kenyans that chance, because in any event, Article 95, Clause 1 says the National Assembly represents the people, and other special interests. So sometimes, and in any event, really, looking at the organization of government, there is a Ministry of Cooperatives. It may well be that the matters might not be resolved in the village, and that even if they went to the county assembly may still have to find itself required to make recommendations which will have to be addressed by the national government at the level of the ministry. So whereas I agree with you that we don't want to be inundated with all manner of village concerns, but nevertheless, we gave ourselves the Constitution. And we need to be provided that any Kenyan may petition on any matter, including petitioning the Parliament, the House particularly, to do away with the Constitution, if a Kenyan feels so. If a petition came requiring that, all we need to do is to see whether it meets the threshold, and then advise, the committee will go and advise, please go and collect the requisite number of signatures. That may be the only avenue available. Some of these, of course, again, Honorable Mbadi, may just be communicated to the petitioners once the committee finds that maybe the matter does not fall within the national level. The resolution of the committee might just be communicated directly through administrative channels. Thank you. Next one.
Order number 5, papers.
Honourable members, before we proceed, because I normally see members coming to check on the screen here whether their names are showing. Just to remind ourselves again that the screen can only capture the first 10 names. But there is a tendency that even by the time I sat, there were, even now, there are already 4 names which are at the compartment for interventions. Is it that the members who have put their names there needed to make some interventions? What? You want to make comments on the petition? Yeah? That is perfect. That is perfect. I can see the member for Makueni. Or you already jumped?
No, Mr. Speaker, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on that particular petition. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with your comments, but also agree with the Honourable Body, but wish to state that as per now, the Act of Parliament related to cooperatives is still the one in force, and there has been no system at the counties, Mr. Speaker, for the counties to be able to pass their own law so that they can deal with the matters of cooperatives at the county governments, although the matter is devolved under Schedule 4 is one of the matters to be handled by counties, but some of them, cooperatives are in a nature, Mr. Speaker, that some are at the county level, others are at national level, and up to today, this particular cooperative is still registered under the ministry, which is activating its national mandate, and I believe it has been sent to the right committee. I'm a member of that committee. I'm an expert of cooperatives, and I'm sure I'll assist the committee to assist that particular cooperative.
Indeed, Article 119 of the Constitution reads, subheading is right to petition Parliament. Clause 1 reads that every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. And number 2, that Parliament shall make provision for the procedure for the exercise of this right, which is why we provided it in the standing orders. Anybody else desirous of making comments on the petition? Yeah, the member for Kiminini. But yeah. Honorable Manzo, again, your name appears on the intervention compartment. You see, are you suggesting that you haven't known how to, or you have forgotten how to use the? Please, I can see the following names on the compartment for interventions. Member for South Imenti and member for Bere North. You want to comment on the petition? All these are interventions. What? On the petition. Very well, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my concern on the petitions, I remember in last parliament, you indicated about the 60 days. And there are so many petitions, Mr. Speaker, which went beyond the 60 days. My humble request, Mr. Speaker, is that we need to have a mechanism to enforce this, because many petitions come and they disappear, and maybe it's the highest time the Committee on Implementation, whether it's the rightful committee, so that we can be able to implement, because we can't be discussing this, Mr. Speaker, in vain. Again, Mr. Speaker, just looking on today's order paper, I'm very impressed, particularly motion 15 on these instruments. It is true, Mr. Speaker, last time there were petitions pertaining these instruments, but maybe the Committee on Delegated Legislation, I'm hoping the current chair, from the look of things, it seems she might do better. Mine is just to encourage her to keep it up so that we follow this. Because you find some of the regulations, Mr. Speaker, they've already implemented, and yet Parliament has not discussed them. I thank you.
Just to again to point out, which I did last evening, that the Statutory Instruments Act provides inter alia that any statutory making body or authority is at liberty to do so, table them within 7 days in the House, but the provisions of those statutory instruments may be implemented. But should the House make findings that should debar their implementation, again, that is catered for in the Statutory Instruments Act. But I think early this morning, there was, I had the chair of the committee give notice of motion, and I'm sure she will be giving some explanations and reasons for why this motion is here today. I'm aware that there are very many statutory instruments which were brought to the office of the clerk, and I saw them when the House was on recess. So there may be need for more time to be given for the committee to be able to scrutinize them. And the committee is at liberty to make whatever recommendations they find appropriate. Member for Ronyenjes, this cooperative is in your constituency. That's what they say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this issue of the petition. It is true the petitioners are members that come from my constituency, and the Kieni Farmers Cooperative Society is a society that is well known to me. And I wish to confess that the said petitioners have sought help from my office, and I took time to refer them to the county government where they didn't get support. So they came here because they thought that the Parliamentary Committee on Trade can handle their matter better than the county government. So I am in support of your direction that the matter be heard at the Departmental Committee on Trade. Thank you.
Very well. Member for South Imenti.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for also giving me this opportunity to give my comment on this petition. Mr. Speaker, mine is very brief because so many farmers have lost their property through the cooperative societies. In the region where we come from, this is actually what has brought down the coffee sector. And Mr. Speaker, when these farmers from Kieni Farmers Cooperative Society seek the indulgence of this house for support, I think no member should belittle what is brought to this house. Because the leader of minority, I am saying clearly that very simple matters are brought to this house. And I think the farmers themselves, wherever they are, the petitioners, are not happy because they feel this is the house which can be able to sort out the problems. Therefore, The best thing is to say maybe it can be taken back to the county assemblies, but then it is not a small matter. Because when a farmer who cannot even afford a meal or a school fees for his or a kid brings a petition to his house and then we beat it through. And these assets turning to millions and millions of money, Mr. Speaker, it is important to give them this hearing. And I'm happy because you really quoted Article 85(1), which says the people of Kenya can petition this house. And Honorable Mbandi himself, the word people, is very much in his vocabulary more than any other word, Mr. Speaker. Because he talks of people every day, he speaks out there. Therefore, the people have that capacity to petition us and to help them sort out. I am happy that they have also maybe talked to the area MP, and for sure, I'm a member of the committee who will be able to help these farmers to get back their property. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, no more comments. It's not debates, it's just comments. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 14th, 2018, afternoon sitting. Number 1, 2018 Budget Policy Statement from the National Treasury. The Cabinet Secretary has forwarded the Budget Policy Statement and the medium-term debt management together with the draft division of revenue bill and the count allocation of revenue bill to comply with the statutory timelines. However, Mr. Speaker, the two bills are being dealt with administratively and are before the budget office. 2, the medium-term debt management strategy for financial year 2018-2019 to 2020-2021 from the National Treasury. 3, the legal notice number 44 and number 45 of 8 February 2018 relating to Income Tax Act, Cap 470 from the National Treasury. Number 4, the first quarterly National Government Budget Implementation Review Report for the financial year 2017-2018 by the Office of the Controller of Budget. 5, the quarterly Economic and Budgetary Review Report by the National Treasury for the period ending 31st of December 2017. 6, the Treasury Memorandum on the Public Accounts Committee Report for the financial year 2013-2014 by the National Treasury. 7, the East African Community Protocol on Cooperation in Meteorological Services. 8, the 2017 Assumption of Office of the President Committee. And Mr. Speaker, I said President, it's not the People's President. The 2017 Assumption of Office of the President's Committee report to Parliament in accordance with Section 19 of the Assumption of Office of President Act 2012. Number 9, Mr. Speaker, the State of the Judiciary and Administration of Justice Annual Report from the Judiciary for the financial year 2016-2017. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year that ended 30th June 2016 and the certificate therein. Number 1 is Belgut constituency, Wajir North constituency, Wajir West constituency, Mwingi North constituency, Kamkunji constituency, Ijara constituency, Laisamis constituency, Iata constituency, Embakazi is constituency, and finally Westlands constituency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, the legal notice number 44, numbers 44 and 45 of 8th of February 2018 relating to Income Tax Acts from the National Treasury is to be referred to the Committee on Delegated Legislation, as well as the East African Community No. This one will go to East African Community Protocol on Cooperation in Meteorological Services. This is to be referred to the Committee on Regional Integration. And received a request from the Chair of Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Chair. As much as there's nothing out of order with the papers laid by the Majority Leader, just wanted to take this opportunity in line with Standing Order 232(5) to remind especially chairs of all departmental committees, Mr. Speaker, that they have only 7 days from this afternoon to consider and make recommendations to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And therefore, we do expect as a committee that probably by the next week, Wednesday, Thursday, they will have completed that, and therefore it's imperative that all chairs of committees do note, so that if they have any engagement with the relevant departments and ministries, to engage them within the next 7 days, because the Budget and Appropriations Committee, we only have another 7 days after that to be able to table a report here on that. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me also, the Majority Leader has also tabled the report from the judiciary. And if you remember, Mr. Speaker, in the last session in the 11th Parliament, and I'm sure the chair of the Jailer Committee is here, the Honorable Gladys Sholei, Cheptumo, the Honorable Cheptumo. It's only that the Honorable Gladys Sholei happened to have served in the judiciary as a registrar. And therefore, because she was whispering behind me, is the Honorable Cheptumo, Mr. Speaker. Sir, you remember in the 11th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, the Jailer Committee never had an opportunity to table a report based on the reports that are submitted on the state of the judiciary. And it is not news to the people of Kenya that indeed the state of our judiciary today, to many observers in the public, there are questions that are wanting. I've seen very good measures by the Honorable Chief Justice to try even transfer a few of the judicial officers around the country. But there are pertinent issues within the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, sir, that need to be addressed. And I hope that the Jailer Committee will, with this first report in the 12th Assembly, be able to table a report that members can interrogate the actual state of our judicial process in this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, you noticed yesterday, and I see the Honorable Olago Oloch today is the only member donning the ribbons people are donning yesterday. I don't know, maybe others may have forgotten, but it points to issues that many Kenyans are concerned about the state of our judicial system, Mr. Speaker, and I do hope that the Honorable Cheptumo and his committee will not only consider this report from the judiciary, but also allow members to interrogate the actual state of that judiciary by tabling a report here that members can debate, and where we can even invite members of the public to give their views in line with the constitutional provision of public participation on the state of this judiciary, Mr. Speaker, which I have a big problem with. Thank you.
Well, I think it's important that chairs of departmental committees take cognizance of the issue raised relating to the budget policy statements. As you know, in our own rules, particularly in our standing orders, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury is required by law to table that report not later than 15th of February every year. And again, what has just been said is the true position. So the committees and the chairs have only those 7 days within which to consider those broad policy issues that may be contained in that statement, and to be able to appear also, if need be, before the Budget and Appropriations Committee to make representations as they deem appropriate. So chairs of committees, take note. You don't have the luxury of a lot of time before you conclude your consideration of the budget policy statement. Of course, with regard to the state of the judiciary and administration of justice, My own remarks when I received that report was that would want the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee to now scrutinize that report so as to make a report that the House can debate, because that is their own version of what they are doing, or what they think is the state of the judiciary and the administration of justice in the Republic. So I think, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, you have your work cut out. We want to get a report. The report is voluminous, so you also have to burn the midnight oil to make sure that we get some reports. And the other point that has been raised is with regard to the petitions. In the last Parliament, some of the committees to which petitions were referred to took in excess of the mandatory 60 days without coming back to the House to seek extension. It is therefore directed that whenever a petition is referred to a committee, the committee complies with the provisions of our standing orders. Bring a report within 60 days. And if for one reason or other you're not able to, come and make a report to the House, so the House can decide whether or not to give you extension to go out to continue considering those petitions. And so that even those who petition don't think that their petitions have been ignored by the House. And we'll make strict follow-ups. We will dedicate a staff to be making those follow-ups. Move to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements. Order number 8.
Sorry, just a minute. I see the member for Muranga has an intervention. You see, that's the problem I'm having. When members place their cards in the intervention compartment. Next order.
Order number 8, the Kenya Coast Guard Service Bill, National Assembly Bill number 45 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to establish the Kenya Coast Guard Service to provide for its functions, discipline, organization, and administration, and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the Irrigation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to promote and regulate the development and management of irrigation in Kenya and for connected purposes.
Of course, in keeping with our rules again, once a bill is read for the first time, it stands committed to the relevant departmental committee without question put. So it's for that reason that no question is being put, and the relevant committees are deemed now to be ceased of those bills.
Order number 10, the Petroleum Exploration, Development and Production Bill, National Assembly Bill number 48 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide a framework for the contract, exploration, development and production of petroleum, cessation of upstream petroleum operations, to give effect to relevant articles of the Constitution insofar as they apply to upstream petroleum operations and for connected purposes. Order number 11, the Energy Bill, National Assembly Bill number 50 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to consolidate the laws relating to energy, to provide for national and county government functions in relation to energy, to provide for the establishment, powers and functions of the energy sector entities, promotion of renewable energy, exploration, recovery and commercial utilization and geothermal energy, regulation of midstream and downstream petroleum and coal activities, regulation, production, supply and use of electricity and other energy forms and for connected purposes. Order number 12, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 51 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Order number 13, the Public-Private Partnerships Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public-Private Partnerships Act 2013. Order number 14, the Circle Societies Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 1 of 2018, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Circle Societies Act 2008.
Honourable members, before we proceed, let me recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery of pupils from Kariobangi South Primary School, Embakasi West constituency in Nairobi County, and students from Kanini Secondary School, Mbooni constituency, Makueni County, and those from Tangaza University, Langata constituency, Nairobi County. They are all welcome to observe the proceedings in the National Assembly. Next order.
Order number 15, motion, extension of the period for consideration of statutory instruments.
Chair, Committee on the Delegated Legislation, please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the motion that in furtherance of the provisions of Standing Order 210, sub-clause 3, relating to the mandate of the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and notwithstanding the provisions of Section 15(2) of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, relating to the period of consideration of statutory instruments by the committee, this House resolves to extend the period for the consideration of the following 29 statutory instruments submitted to the House between September 25th, 2017 and December 13th, 2017, when the Committee on Delegated Legislation had not been constituted by a further period of 90 days from the 14th of February 2018, as follows. The Competition Tribunal Procedure Rules 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Commissioning of Officers Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Active Service Punishment Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Internal Grievance and Mechanisms Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Retired Officers and Service Members Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Constabulary Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Missing Persons Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Board of Inquiry Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces General Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Execution of Sentence of Death Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Imprisonment Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Pensions and Gratuities Regulations 2017, the Kenya Defence Forces Procedure Regulations 2017, and the National Land Commission Investigations of Historical Injustices Regulations 2017, the Capital Markets Authority Online Foreign Exchange and Regulations 2017, the Civil Aviation Remote Piloted Aircraft Systems Regulations 2017, the Land Extension and Renewal of Leases Rules 2017, the Land Conversion of Land Rules 2017, the Land Assessment of Just Compensation Rules 2017, the Land Allocation of Public Land Regulations 2017, the Land Registration General Regulations 2017, the Land Registration of Units Order 2017, the Land Regulations 2017, the Community Land Regulations 2017, the Wildlife Conservation Management Implementation of Treaties Regulations 2017, the Wildlife Conservation Management Protection of Endangered and Threatened Ecosystems, Habitats and Species Regulations 2017, the Wildlife Conservation Management and Joint Management and Protection of Water Towers Regulations 2017, Wildlife Conservation Management Compensation Regulations 2017, and lastly, the Wildlife Conservation Management Government Trophies Regulations 2017. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this House grants the Committee on Delegated Legislation the extension of time to consider these regulations pending before it. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, and for the knowledge of the larger members of the public at large, that the legislative authority is vested and exercised by the Parliament in accordance to Article 95, 94, and 109 of the Constitution. However, the Constitution also confers authority to the executive to pass legislation, delegated legislation, provided they are within the scope of the Constitution. The Select Committee on Delegated Legislation is established pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 210, with the power to scrutinize all statutory instruments that are submitted to the House to ensure that they are within the Constitution and comply with all applicable laws. Mr. Speaker, the Statutory Instruments Act number 23 of 2013 provides that every instrument should be tabled before the respective House of Parliament and shall stand referred to the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and so that the committee can scrutinize the instruments in accordance to the considerations contained in Section 13 of the Statutory Instruments Act. Further, it provides that the committee shall make a report to Parliament within 28 days after the date of referral, or such other period as the House may, by resolution, approve. So, Mr. Speaker, the import is that of this section is that the House may, by resolution, vary the period of 28 days. Today, we seek that the House varies the amount of time that we have by a further 90 days. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that on the 14th of December, which was the last day of the previous session, you did indicate that the Committee for Delegated Legislation should look at all the pending instruments before it that had not yet been considered before the end of the term of the last Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the 17th of January, the Committee on Delegated Legislation did scrutinize and consider and deliberate on the various pieces of legislation. And in the cases that have been isolated, it was found that there was need for further consultation with the regulating bodies in order to ensure that all errors and untidiness that were in the pieces of legislation can be corrected. You may also recall, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the committee also identified that there was need to amend some of the statutory instruments, including the need to provide for the extension of time for consideration in order that we may comprehensively deliberate upon them, since many of them had been a subject of litigation before our courts. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee did notice that some of the legislation regulations had been gazetted without titles and without reference to the parent statute. Others did not have the correct, constitutionally referred to definitions. And therefore, for that reason, the committee saw it fit that there is need to consult further with the regulatory making authorities in order to streamline all this. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the House grants the Committee on Delegated Legislation extension of time to consider these regulations pending before it. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, sir, to call upon Honorable Shamala Jennifer to second the motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Somebody seconding you? Honorable Jennifer Shamala.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to second the motion for extension of the period for consideration of statutory instruments. Mr. Speaker, sir, the regulations did come before the committee, and in some of the regulations, critical elements of public participation as anchored in Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya had not been complied with. Indeed, in a High Court judgment of 19th December 2016, a declaration was issued with regards to the land regulations on registration of forms, titles, leases, and other documents. And it was determined, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the same had been made without the necessary public participation. Mr. Speaker, sir, other regulations referred only to wives and not spouses. This was with regards to regulations concerning or that dealt or touched on pensions and gratuities. The assumption being that it was only men employed in that particular sector. In view of the above, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that the regulation-making authority do appear before the Committee on Delegated Legislation for further consultations in order for these anomalies so that the same may be relayed to these particular bodies and for compliance with the parent legislation and, more importantly, with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I second.
Yes, honourable members, I think it's important to appreciate that this motion is merely for extension of time, and some of the reasons given, especially both by the mover and the seconder, some of them have some very huge implications. Maybe not many members would be aware that especially regulations listed at number 17, the land, in brackets, extension and renewal of leases rules are so critical that I think just on 31st of last month, that the court gave a further extension of only 6 months. And the implication is that if this is not done, it might well result in many of the leases that have been extended since 2013 being rendered null and void. So this is the reason, indeed, what Honorable Jennifer Shamala said about this, it's a matter that is well known to me, that that has happened. But be that as it may, honourable members, I wish to propose the question. Please, let me just take a seat so that we can. The member for North Hall, if you. Honourable members, I wish to dispose of this matter in the following manner, that I will read the first part of the motion listed as order number 15, but not read all the regulations. So as you respond, you will know that the regulations are captured. So I propose the question, which is that in furtherance to the provision of standing order number 210, subsection 3, relating to the mandate of the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and notwithstanding the provisions of section 15, subsection 2 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, relating to the period of consideration of statutory instruments by the committee, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the following 29 statutory instruments submitted to the House between September 25th, 2017 and December 13th, 2017, when the Committee on Delegated Legislation had not been constituted, by a further period of 90 days from the 14th of February 2018. Will as many as of that opinion say, sorry. Honourable members, it's proposing the question. I put the question. Honourable members, I think the reason was that so many members who are naturally very migratory, almost desirous of moving. So I put the question, seems to be the desire of the House, that in furtherance to the provision of standing order number 210, subsection 3, relating to the mandate of the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and notwithstanding the provisions of section 15, subsection 2 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, relating to the period of consideration of statutory instruments by the committee, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the following 29 statutory instruments listed on the order paper, submitted to the House between September 25th, 2017 and December 13th, 2017, when the Committee on Delegated Legislation had not been constituted, by a further period of 90 days from 14th February 2013. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Member for Kimini, what's your point of order? You don't have to shout.
Thank you.
These days, when a member shouts, they will not be getting a chance. They just put your intervention. Yes, and you don't have problems putting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek your direction, just pertaining this motion that we've just extended on the statutory instruments. I remember Mr. Speaker had indicated this, that most of the time we've always believed that the statutory instruments must be discussed in Parliament first before they're implemented. But you indicated that they have a leeway. They can be able to implement, and in case it comes to the floor of the House and is defeated, or maybe it's going to be annulled, it's when now it can be recalled. Mr. Speaker, there are some of the statutory instruments that infringes particularly on the public rights. And we've seen many ministries passing these statutory instruments. They've already been implemented, Mr. Speaker. And a situation whereby it has been implemented and afterwards been annulled. Is that opportunity cost? How are you going to handle this, Mr. Speaker? Because it's actually something which some members have gone to court. It is very common. Some statutory instruments have already been implemented. Some didn't go through the proper public participation. So we are just getting confused, Mr. Speaker. So I seek your clarity, particularly on this. And Mr. Speaker, particularly when it comes to the issues of public participation, we know we don't have a statute to operationalize that. Though I'm working on one, which I'm humbly requesting that you expedite, so that you can have one that you can refer on. So I need your direction, Mr. Speaker, because I'm actually concerned. Some people have suffered, and if something is annulled afterwards, what happens to them in terms of compensation? Thank you.
Indeed, in the wisdom of this House, in the 10th Parliament, when the Statutory Instruments Act was debated and passed by that House, as then comprised, some members of which are still in this House, it was provided, and I think you can check between sections 8 to 15, of that act, that any regulation-making body or authority is only required after publishing and gazetting within 7 days to table those regulations or whatever form of supplementary legislation it may be, or statutory instrument, before the House. The House is then required to consider them within the time frames which are around there. But, of course, should the House not be sitting, the law itself, that same law provides that the body that proposes to make those regulations is still at liberty to implement them. And it did specifically says that nothing done on the authority of those statutory instruments is illegal or unlawful until such time as the House will have annulled them. So it is too bad that the law has said that they're exempted. And the reason being, of course, that the House sometimes may not be sitting, or the committee itself may be having too much work at hand, and may not have pronounced itself on those regulations or instruments. So it is within the law, unless I have not had anybody challenge those particular provisions of the Act. So it's still, it's unfortunate. If anybody serves before the House has expressed itself one way or other on any proposed statutory instruments. So, so there's that exemption provided for in the Act. If you read the Act, it has those clauses. So I think the committee is within its right, and the House is also within its right to resolve as it has to extend the period within which the committee is to consider all this. And as you can see, honourable members, these regulations are quite many. They are quite many, and they, of course, will mean that the committee will be interacting with many stakeholders, some of them the ones proposing those regulations, and others being the public, the general public. So there's still quite a lot that needs to be done by the committee. Honorable Gladys Sheloi and your committee, I think we cannot be far from the truth to say that you have your work cut out in the next 90 days, and many others are coming.
Potential conflict of interest. Number 6, Mr. Speaker, that all the nominees satisfy the requirements of Article 77, subsection 1 of the Constitution, in that they do not intend to participate in any other gainful employment. Number 7, that all the nominees do not hold office in any political party, hence satisfy the provisions of Article 77, subsection 2 of the Constitution. Honorable Munya has resigned as the party leader of PNU. Honorable Ukur Yatani has resigned as the party leader of the Frontier Party of Kenya, and the rest of the other members did not have any political affiliation. That none of the nominees have been dismissed from office under Article 75 of the Constitution for contravening Article 75(1), conflict of interest, Article 76 on financial property, Article 77, restriction of state officers, Article 78(2) on dual citizenship of the Constitution, and are therefore, in the honest opinion of the committee chaired by the Speaker, fit to hold office as cabinet secretaries. Mr. Speaker, finally, number 9, the committee found that all nominees have exhibited impressive knowledge and understanding of issues relating to the dockets they have been nominated for appointment. Those are the observations, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the standing orders under your leadership, all the provisions of law in the Constitution, in the Public Appointments Act, in the standing orders were fulfilled, timelines were respected, and that's why yesterday we asked for an extension of 2 days. And I am sure the report which was tabled before this House is a report that has been considered within law and that all the nominees have complied with, whether it is a two-third gender, whether it is whether they have complied with the tax compliance in as far as the law is concerned. They have no criminal recording, and they have exhibited all the knowledge and understanding. And Mr. Speaker, I am wondering that, you know, our colleagues, some of them are not here. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, the people of Kenya have been very good to us as a Jubilee. They have been good to us because they have elected our president and the deputy president. They have given us the numbers in both houses, and I am sure we are up to the task to comply with the standing orders. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion and recommendation, I urge members to read the comprehensive report of the Committee on Appointments in order to fully appreciate and enrich the debate, and further urge the members and approve the appointment of the following persons as cabinet secretaries in their respective ministries: Honorable Professor Margaret Kobia, Honorable John Munyes, Ambassador Dr. Monica Juma, Ms. Farida Karonei, Honorable Peter Munya, Mr. Kariako Tobiko, Mr. Simon Chelugoi, Honorable Ukuriatani, and finally, Mr. Speaker, the great man of the day, Rashid Echeza Mohammed. And Mr. Speaker, that cabinet nominee, Mr. Speaker, when you gave him an opportunity and asked him what is your parting shot, he made a number of our committee members shed tears. Because he said, I want to thank the president and the deputy president for giving the son of a peasant to serve in their cabinet. So, Mr. Speaker, he represents many of us who are from the peasantry family. Now, Mr. Speaker, in this country, you had the chance to be the son of Jaramogi Odinga Oginga. You had the chance to become the son of Uhuru Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, or the son of Moi, Speaker. But there are some of us who their fathers have no BO box. They have no BO box. They have never owned a rental postal address. And because of such great leaders like President Uhuru Kenyatta, Rashid Echeza is going to represent the face of the poor in our country, and the young. And Mr. Speaker, it is not how many PhDs you have. It is not how many prestigious universities and schools you have gone to. It's not whether you went to Alliance or St. Mary. It is the man and the woman that you are that will, and as Honorable Cecil Mbarire put it to him, that nominee, that at least you have confirmed that dreams are achievable. And Rashid Echeza, a very vibrant youth leader, is now in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker. So I ask my colleagues that we approve and we give the president an opportunity to swear in these men and women so that we complete his cabinet and we implement through legislation and budgetary provision the 4 key legacy projects of President Uhuru Kenyatta and our manifesto, and Jubilee will live longer. Jubilee will be like the ANC. Jubilee will be like the Republican Party and the Conservative Party. The rest can remain as tribal, ethnic outfits, squabbling and spreading hatred and ethnic division. Speaker, I beg to move and ask the great woman from Murang'a County, the Chair of Health.
Honorable Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on the onset, I want to say I second the motion to approve the nominees for the appointment of the cabinet secretaries. Mr. Speaker, I was lucky to be in the vetting committee, And I would also like to congratulate the entire team, Mr. Speaker, for putting in long hours to make sure that the vetting went on well. Mr. Speaker, part of our mandate as a committee, we looked at the academic qualifications, the employment records, professionalism, potential conflict of interest, knowledge of relevant subject, integrity, among other things, Mr. Speaker. But on the onset, I want to congratulate His Excellency the President and the Deputy President for giving us a good team. I would like to, Mr. Speaker, to applaud the women or the ladies who are part of the team, and that is Kobia, Monica Juma, and Farida Karonei. Mr. Speaker, these are ladies of substance. Part of what they presented, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say a lot of publications have been done by these great ladies, especially Monica Juma and Professor Kobia. Mr. Speaker, Farida Karonei also presented herself very well in the committee, and though she's not an expert in the land issues, there's one thing she told the committee, that she believes in teamwork and working with the people who are expertise in that field to make sure that land issues are going to be sorted. And I'm very sure, Mr. Speaker, once you trust a woman, because women are not selfish, we know land issues are going to be settled once and for all. I was a bit disappointed, Mr. Speaker, to see members from the other side of the coalition walking out. And Mr. Speaker, this is a very important exercise where we are going to be approving the same people. They'll be going to be sitting at their receptions begging for favors. It is an embarrassment because, Mr. Speaker, they are earning a salary from this house and they're supposed to be representing their people, but they have chosen otherwise. Mr. Speaker, when we look at the members that we vetted, we had 9 members. 3 of them were ladies and 6 of them are gentlemen. And I want to congratulate the President and the Deputy for giving us a gender balance. At the same time, Rashid Mohammed is one of the person who represents the youth. And apart from Rashid coming from the poor background, him being a young person, he also proved that dreams are valid. And Mr. Speaker, we know very many people who have served this nation, including one, Jenga Karume, who didn't really have a formal education, but he really served well. And so it was an opportunity for us, Mr. Speaker, to interact with one Rashid Mohammed who really impressed the committee. Mr. Speaker, when we engaged the team or the nominees who came before us, it was also very important to note that politics can also pay. We saw some of the political parties who actually merged with the Jubilee, one Mr. Munya, who also was one of the nominees, and one Yatani. And apart from him being a politician, Mr. Speaker, he also has vast knowledge from being a DO all the way to serving as an assistant minister and also as a governor and coming back now to serve as a cabinet secretary. And I want to encourage members of this house that being a member of parliament, once you lose, that is not the end of it all. If you are in the right political party, you will be rewarded accordingly. And I want to congratulate the President for allowing Mr. Munya and Honorable Yatani to also come back and serve in the cabinet, because they have also other expertise that they have, Mr. Speaker. Apart from that, I noted with a lot of keenness, Mr. Speaker, the kind of the curriculum vitae, we call it a CV of Honorable Okuri Yatan. Mr. Speaker, I think it's something that members, if they have a chance, they need to look at the new way of doing the CVs. This really also impressed the committee. And so I urge this House, Mr. Speaker, that we move and approve the appointees or the nominees to these positions, because this nation needs to move on. We need to start serving the people. And one thing we noted, Mr. Speaker, one, Mr. Cherugui, who is going to serve under the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. He is one person who knew the subject matter, his ministry inside out, and almost answered all the questions very well. And we saw a dedicated, a committed team, and we saw the commitment that the President took time with his deputy to actually give us a very good team. We are looking forward to working with them. And the vetting committee also will be following. They gave us so many promises, and I know they are watching. I want to tell the nominees, starting from Professor Margaret Kobia, John Munez, Monica Juma, Farida Karonei, Peter Munya, Kereiko Tobiko, Simon Cherugui, Yatani, and Rashid, that you promise this committee that you're going to work for this nation. You don't have any otherwise. You have to serve and serve Kenyans well, and even prove the naysayers wrong, that you actually are. I second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, I propose the question, which is that this House adopts the reports of the Committee on Appointments on the vetting of 9 Cabinet Secretary nominees, volumes 1 and 2, for appointment to the position of Cabinet Secretary, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 13, 2018, and pursuant to Article 152, Clause 2 of the Constitution, and the provisions of Standing Order number 204, subsection 4, approves the appointment of the following persons as Cabinet Secretaries in the respective ministries. 1, Professor Margaret Kobia, Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. 2, Honorable John Munyes, Petroleum and Mining. 3, Ambassador Dr. Monica Juma, Foreign Affairs and International Trade. 4, Ms. Farida Karunei, Lands and Physical Planning. 5, Honorable Peter Munya, East African Community and Northern Corridor Development. 6, Mr. Keriako Tobiko, Environment and Forestry. 7, Mr. Simon Chelugui, Water and Sanitation. 8, the Honorable Ukuri Atani, Labor and Social Protection. And 9, Mr. Rashid Echeza Mohammed, Sports and Heritage. Honorable Member for North Hall.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the special motion on approval of nominees for appointment as Cabinet Secretaries in our government. Mr. Speaker, sir, I commend the appointment committee under your leadership for a sound report. Mr. Speaker, sir, the report is very comprehensive and covers all aspects of vetting as per the Parliamentary Approval Act and the relevant provisions in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to commend the President for appointing a cabinet with the face of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, as humanly possible, President ensured the cabinet appointees represent the diversity of Kenyan society. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's not possible for all the committees in our 47 great counties to be represented in a cabinet position of only 22 positions. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sure our President will ensure that all other communities will have a chance to serve in public positions in our government as permanent secretaries, as ambassadors, in many other positions available in our nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank the President in a very special way for rewarding the people of Marsabit County with not only a cabinet position in the name of Ambassador Ukuri Atani, but only for giving us 2 ambassador positions in the name of Mr. Larus Lenayapa, who will be our ambassador nominee to Netherlands, and also Mr. Asan Wario Arero, who will be our ambassador to Austria. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a great honor to the people of Marsabit County, and as a leader and people of that great county, we will be indebted to the Jubilee government, and we commit to support our government through thick and thin. Mr. Speaker, sir, in a very special way, I really want to thank for appointing Ambassador Ukuri Atani, who is not only my constituent, Mr. Speaker, sir, but person who passed on the baton of leadership on the constituency over a decade ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Yatani is extremely well experienced technocrat in public service with requisite professional and academic qualifications. He not only holds Bachelor of Arts degree from Egerton University, but he only holds master's degree in public administration from York University in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, sir, he served this nation in various portfolios, starting as DO cadet, serving as district commissioner in many parts of this country, serving as member of parliament for North Hall, serving as assistant minister in President Kibaki's government, and later as our ambassador to Vienna, to Austria, based in Vienna. Mr. Speaker, sir, he served as the pioneer, or rather the first founding governor of Marsabit County. Mr. Speaker, sir, in all these positions, he served this country diligently and with honor. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the pioneer governor of Marsabit County, he laid a solid foundation for the takeoff of our county. Mr. Speaker, sir, the development infrastructure that he initiated are envy for many of our neighboring counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, he built multi-story building as governor's office. He built multi-story building as offices for our MCS and chamber for Marsabit County Assembly. He tarmacked roads in Marsabit County and started a modern abattoir, the best in the region, which is now under construction. Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder that Honorable Kuti, the governor for Isiolo, when he took over, he sent a team from Isiolo to Marsabit County to go and learn how Governor Yatani was able to do such great strides, great development work within 4 years of his leadership. Mr. Speaker, sir, as proven by his sound professional record, is surely well-trained, well-experienced, well-placed to handle the heavy tasks required of him as cabinet secretary in our government. Mr. Speaker, sir, I urge this House and my colleagues to approve all the nominees for cabinet secretary positions, including Yatani, as recommended by our committee on appointment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable members, for the time being, I'm hoping that every member has read the report, and therefore I will have a bias towards members who are not members of the committee. Yeah. No, the others will also get a chance, but the greater numbers will be of those members who are not members of the committee. So that they also, it is good you also, if you are in the committee, you hear what others think of what you have done. Member for Turkana North.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I wish to thank the members of this committee for coming up with a very comprehensive report. Honorable Speaker, the report reflects so many critical aspects that are the main criteria for holding public office. Honorable Speaker, I too wish to thank the President for coming up with a list of very capable and qualified Kenyans who represent serious diversities of all ethnics, majority of the ethnics that are in Kenya. The people also contain, the report also indicates that the nominees have vast experience, well-read, and they have served this country in various capacities. Honorable Speaker, I want to particularly, I'm really impressed with the report indicating the youth representative, Mr. Acheza. The report indicates that Mr. Acheza has unique characteristics which exhibit that it's not only education that you can make the ends meet or you can serve the country, but you can serve the country in whichever skills you have effectively and diligently. Honorable Speaker, the team, all the 9 nominees have clean record of having served this country, devoid of any economic crimes, devoid of any court cases, and I've also had
these 9 individuals got a clean bill of health in matters integrity. Not any one of these members was found to be to have any matter in the courts for the last 3 months as is required as part of the clearance. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of tax compliance, we again see that these 9 great Kenyans got a clean bill of health in this front, and therefore being people who are leading from the front. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of gender balance, again, Mr. Speaker, the President, in respect for the rule of law and respect for the constitutional requirement for the two-third gender requirement, Mr. Speaker, we see that the list that is before us this afternoon is actually compliant with regard to the gender threshold. Mr. Speaker, the other impressive aspect of this list of nominees, Mr. Speaker, is with regard to the youth representation. Out of the 9 nominees, we have seen that we have the nominee for sports and heritage, Mr. Mohammed. And again, the committee notes that even without that constitutional requirement for a threshold like we have for gender, the President has gone out of his way to make sure that the youth have a place on the table of making critical decisions in the executive by appointing this nominee. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, even without looking at the strict, sometimes we superficially want to look at somebody's credentials, academic qualifications, but we have, like this afternoon, I learned that there's something to do with emotional intelligence. I think the President must have applied his mind to such, you know, unseen qualifications in some of these nominees to show that, you know, they have some very critical qualities in the various dockets that they've been nominated to. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of diversity in ethnicity and regional balancing, again, the President's list is beyond reproach. Mr. Speaker, and as I speak here, as a pastoralist, we are happy and feel very, you know, well considered by the President's list. Mr. Speaker, having a third of the membership actually being great men, Honorable Mr. Keriako Tobiko, Honorable Muñez, Honorable Lukuri Atani, and not just being that they are from minority groups, Mr. Speaker, from their CVs, they are men of great repute who have served in various public capacities and have proved themselves capable of actually representing Kenyans and working for them. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I just want to again say that I fully support the report of the committee, and it is unfortunate that members from the opposition are not here to participate, yet they are going to be the first in the front line to run for services from this same government. I think this hypocrisy should stop, Mr. Speaker, and people should really come out and do that which the people of Kenya elected them to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the report.
What's your point of order? Member for Nakuru Town East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand on standing order number 95, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look from both sides of the parliament, the majority and the minority, let me finish. On both sides, the minority and the majority side, none of them is opposing the good work that the President did in terms of appointing the nominees. And since, Mr. Speaker, I know maybe people are very much at your desk and you're not observing, every speaker who speaks walks out. Every other speaker who speaks walks out. Finally, we will not have a good number for us to be able to. And it is true, I understand that most of the members would really want to give their contribution, not because the nominees come from their respective areas, but it's the good work that have been done, and also they are looking, the judiciary is complete, parliament is complete, now it's only the executive that is not complete, and would really want to go out and start working. Like myself, I want a lot of water in my area. The sooner Chelongui starts working. So, Mr. Speaker, I request that with your permission and with your, I know you're a very good person and you are going to put the question. Grant me to put the question so that we can be able so that we can be able, you put if the majority wins, then I will have to wait. But if, and I think everybody wants these nominees to start working. So, Mr. Speaker, I request with your I know you guided the committee in a very, professional way, taking into consideration everything, but I wish, understanding number 95, closure of debate, that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Honorable Gekaria. No, members. The Honorable Gekaria has raised quite some pertinent issues. It's also unfair that a member contributes and walks out. And I also hear some of the proposals that it can be postponed, but remember, by our own practice, and the reason why there was an extension is because nobody wants to plan for the very last. So I think, honorable members, if you could agree among yourselves that you speak not for too long, so that as many of you as possible then can have a chance. But honorable members also now again, allow me to use my discretion of looking at which regions there have not been any contribution. I look at counties, the height of the members speaking, the gender, so that at this particular moment at this point I give Member Voyata. If we can also take a short time, Member Voyata, Charles Kilonzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, I'll be very brief, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say from the onset, I do support the lists as presented by the committee. And Mr. Speaker, as I say so, when you look at the names and in the list, Mr. Speaker, you can see professionals, you see people of experience, Mr. Speaker, you see people of integrity, you see people who will be able to move the ministries, Mr. Speaker. You also see, Mr. Speaker, people of all ages. You see people in their 30s, you see people in their 40s, their 50s. Mr. Speaker, across the board. So in total, Mr. Speaker, I can say it was a good pick. Mr. Speaker, that said, let me talk about the expectations. Mr. Speaker, this House, in many occasions, 9th, 10th, 11th, approves ministers. We are very good in approving, Mr. Speaker. So we expect service delivery, Mr. Speaker. We expect these ministers, Mr. Speaker, to ensure public resources are used in the most prudent manner, Mr. Speaker. We also expect, Mr. Speaker, public money is properly guarded. We don't want to hear the stories of people withdrawing cash in banks, looting public monies, Mr. Speaker. We also expect all these years, Mr. Speaker, to be fair to all. I want to ask the people who have been nominated to be CSS, leave alone the ones who are here, they should not work by the list of how people voted, Mr. Speaker. I want to encourage them to serve all Kenyans equally, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a warning, if indeed, Mr. Speaker, these people practice tribalism, and I want to say, during the 10th Parliament, we had a practice with cabinet, with ministers, then there were ministers. Whenever there was a new minister appointed, the first thing they used to do is to look at all parastatos and go looking and put in their tribesmen. Mr. Speaker, that's a practice which should not be encouraged and which this House, Mr. Speaker, would wish to ensure, Mr. Speaker, is never repeated. We would also not want to see extreme nepotism, as used to happen before, Mr. Speaker. And as we move on, Mr. Speaker, a warning to all of them. If indeed you do not serve the people, nothing will save you. The same House which approved your names will ensure your name is brought here and you are kicked out. And I want to assure you, not even status will save you. It has happened before, Mr. Speaker, and also during the 10th Parliament, when ministers wronged, they know themselves, no need of mentioning names, not even State House was able to help them. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, I was a little bit impressed by Rashid Mohammed, that 6 years old, has only been up to class 8. But I want to encourage him. He's only that 6 years. Let him take time and look at his papers, go back to school as he works. It can be evening class. Let him do Form 4. You never know degree, because Mr. Speaker is also a warning to members of Parliament. A time might come when the requirement to be a CS is a degree. You're a good person, you'll not get the opportunity. And so to members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, also those of us who feel we can get time and go back to school, it's always good to further education, to ensure, as you did in 10th Parliament, when you passed a law saying that you cannot be a member of Parliament unless you have a degree, quite a number were locked out. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude and say this is a good list. Now the ball is now to the team to ensure when they take over offices, they deliver services to the people of this republic. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kajiado South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion, the approval of all the nominees. And Mr. Speaker, because a lot have been said and because of a very short time available, let me just single out 2 nominees. But I want to say generally, as a matter of principle, this list is a good pick, Mr. Speaker, for all of them. There is a lot of mosaic in terms of, a lot of mix in terms of the profession. But generally, when you look on all of them, they are people who have served this country for a very long time in terms of, and in different capacities in the public sector. And meaning that there are people with the experience, they are with the skills and the technical expertise that is required to move this country forward. And especially in the actualization of the Big Four, as stated by His Excellency the President. Mr. Speaker, the first I want to really appreciate is Ambassador Dr. Monica Juma. Mr. Speaker, as has been said in the report, this nominee is a nominee who has got over 25 years experience in terms of work, having been working in the public sector and mostly in international organizations. I think she is a good pick for the ministry proposed. That is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. And Mr. Speaker, I was privileged to be in the 11th Parliament and also to be in the committee that first vetted Dr. Monica Juma. And the first time she was actually nominated was nominated for the Ministry of Defense. When we were vetting this nominee that time, Mr. Speaker, it was actually the view of the committee that she should even have been nominated to serve in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But Mr. Speaker, she did very well in the Defense Ministry. She was moved to Interior in the same capacity. She did very well. She was moved again to her current position, that is Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She did very well, and I think, Mr. Speaker, and I have no doubt at all that the ministry will be in the right hands. Mr. Speaker, the credential of Dr. Monica Juma, as I have said earlier, is mostly working in the international organizations. She has been an ambassador to the African Union. Actually, she has also been posted to IGAD, that is Intergovernmental Authority on Development. She was actually again at UNEA, that's the United Nations Commission for Africa. She actually served in so many international organizations, and I think, as the member for Madeira have correctly said, that no doubt she will work for the good of this country in terms of really putting the footprint of the Kenyan map in the global world, Mr. Speaker, and also in ensuring that, you see now the foreign affairs has got the component of international trade, that the economic pillar of this country, which is part of the Vision 2030, is actually going to be realized. She has a lot of skills on national security policy, and you cannot talk of foreign affairs or foreign diplomacy without relevance to national security, Mr. Speaker. She has actually skills on counter-terrorism and violent extremism, and these are the components that are really very key with respect to foreign relations, Mr. Speaker. She has worked for, in Sierra Leone, something to do with, there was a process for defense in Sierra Leone. She did the same. She was a lead expert again in South Africa, peace support mission. Again on the same, she was a team leader in the Darfur peace process, Mr. Speaker, and also for the Pan-African Parliament Task Force, Mr. Speaker, and again a lead consultant for African Union, and also a team leader on the global sphere process, Mr. Speaker. And I think all these put together, definitely you have no other place to place her other than to head the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Relations, Mr. Speaker, or international trade, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second nominee I want to single out, of course, is the nominee from my home county. That is Keriako Tobiko, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Keriako Tobiko has actually done a lot for this country. First of all, being the first Director of Public Prosecution in the new constitution, Mr. Speaker, it was not easy to transform that office to a real functioning office, as has been said by the member for Tharaka, where he found only 83 prosecutors in the country, but that office is now one of the most efficient, Mr. Speaker, in public service, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I really want to thank the President for that appointment, Mr. Speaker, and I am very sure that Keriako Tobiko is going to be an asset for this country in that environment and forestry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me just speak very quickly that
mahali fulani unaona wale matajiri wanakimbia kununua ardhi ya shamba mahali hapo, kunyanyaza wenyeji wenye wako mahali hapo, ni kwa sababu wanajua ni faida gani wanaenda kupata mahali hapo. Na ndipoza ninasema dada yetu Farida tutamuunga mkono, na ndipoza nauliza wenzangu, nyinyi mkikuwa wenye viti katika kamati, muhakikishe kwamba mnawaunga mkono kuhakikisha kwamba zile sera za Mheshimiwa Rais zimetekeleza vilivyo. Na nimshukuru tena ndugu yetu Mwenyezi, ule ninamtambua, siku moja alikuwa katika chama cha Ford Kenya na alikuwa kama mwenyekiti, na hakika hakukuwa na upakuzi ama rangi ama rika. Nina imani mahali penye amepewa, tukitaka kutatua mambo zetu, hizo ofisi sikuwe wazi na zihudumie wananchi wote wa Kenya, sio kwa kutoka kabila hii ama kabila hiyo ingine. Na mimi najua itatuwezesha pia kusonga mbele kama nchi yetu ya Kenya. Nataka niseme asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii, na asante kuwa mwenyekiti wa uteuzi katika kamati ya wateuzi wa hawa mawaziri. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
A voice from Mandera North. All of you that, but if you could take 2-3 minutes, everybody will have a chance to. From Kericho, member for Kipkelion West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to put my voice to this debate on the approval of the cabinet secretaries to various ministries. Let me begin by thanking the President and the Deputy President for giving Kenya a very robust team to take over the agenda of Jubilee in the second term of the President, and to thank the Committee on Appointments for a job well done, and to specifically thank my president and my deputy for remembering the youth of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, there is a big difference between NASA and Jubilee. When you tell President Kenyatta to remember the youth, he will give you Rashid Achesa. And when you tell NASA to give you a youth, he will give you Oburu Odinga. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to thank the President for being considerate to the youth and to ask that these people be approved for their jobs. They carry with them very good curriculum vitae. People like Professor Margaret Kobia, whose life has always been in public service, is a fit nominee for Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. You don't need to speak much about her, because I knew her when I was in KU, when she was the Registrar Academics in 1996, and I followed her as she rose, even to be a founder member of the Kenya School of Government, and as a chairperson of the Public Service Commission, she has done a splendid job. The person of note, Mr. Speaker, is Mr. Simon Chelugui. When Chelugui ran for the senator for Baringo, everybody wrote him off because they thought they were fighting a giant in the name of Gideon Moi. But Chelugui lost that seat narrowly with votes of less than 20,000 against that millionaire, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the desire to serve the people of Baringo, who with the presidency for 24 years never sorted the water issue in Baringo's county. The people of Baringo are grateful to the Jubilee government for remembering to nominate Mr. Simon Chelugui to address the issues of water in Baringo and the country at large. Mr. Speaker, Martin Luther King said, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. And he went further to say that you don't need to have a college degree to serve. And you even don't need to understand the second theory of relativity to serve. And that he said you only need a heart and a desire for service. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a good definition of our nominee for sports, Mr. Rashid Achesa, who is being dismissed by those who were praising him when he was their national youth leader in ODM. And right now, when he's recognized, they want to say that he's not fit because of his academic credentials. Mr. Speaker, this is the second time that the Jubilee members of Parliament are doing work and the members of NASA are earning. We passed, Mr. Speaker, the bill to the funds for free secondary school when the NASA team was working out the other time. And today, the NASA constituencies and counties are benefiting for free secondary school funds passed by members of this Jubilee August House. Today, we are passing names of nominees to the various CSS positions. And tomorrow, even if they are not here today, they will be the first one to rush to their ministries to beg for services. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I don't see the reason why NASA should continue blackmailing Kenyans, earning for work not done. It is time for them to come here to oppose the list and oppose it on the floor of the House, as opposed to walking out like cowards every so often when we bring a good motion that is for development in the Republic of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, because I don't want to take much time, I want to say I support the nomination of Professor Margaret Kobia, the Honorable John Munyes, Ambassador Monica Juma, Ms. Farida Karonei, Mr. Honorable Peter Munya, Keriako Tobiko, Simon Chelugui, Ukuri Atani, and Rashid Achesa. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Voice from Nandi, Honorable Serem. Just before we leave the sign to the left of the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the list of members that feels that this list should be approved. Mr. Speaker, I support the entire list with one member that I will support with reservations. Monica Chuma was presented before us in the last parliament. I was among those who were opposed. It will be very difficult for me to stand here today and support. But since you've said that we should be very forgiving, and she has apologized and reformed, maybe we should give her a second chance to serve this country. But she should know that some of us are not happy, Mr. Speaker. I hope that the lesson she learned last time, she will advance our cause when she is given this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am a member of parliament from Nandi, a constituency named Aldai. Frida Keronei, she's from Nandi, a village called Kamobo. A very small village, a young girl that grew up knowing that being a girl, you could not get a chance. Because at that, in those moments, the Speaker, our society so much discuss issues of men than women. So as I stand here today, Farida Seronei joined the list of few Nandis, or Nandi women, that have succeeded in life and actually get to the level of where she is today. Sally Koskei, that at one time served this country as a PS, as a Minister of Agriculture. I can say today that Farida is in that league. I want to support the entire list, knowing that some of the nominees were former governors. One of them was a senator. Quite a number of them were civil servants. Mr. Speaker, as I support the same, I also want to challenge the government that in future, let us not have a long list of the number of years one has served. If we come here and say that one has served for 30 years, Mr. Speaker, the young person out there who has a degree and is out there with a job, without a job for the last 5 years, wonders why we are discussing about youth, at the same time discussing about old men and old women. So, Mr. Speaker, we are discussing the same, and that's my concerns. Mr. Speaker, the same. We are not condemning anybody who has papers. If Rashid, a nominee for sports, has no papers, has no degree, we are not saying it's wrong for him not to serve as a nominee or as a CS. But we are not saying it's wrong for anyone to have papers. We are urging, and I'm advising the nominee that if you get a chance, go to class in the evening. It is not a mistake not to have papers, but it's also good for you to get some papers if you have free time. Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, let me wish all the nominees humble time as they begin this journey of transforming this country. I will not sit down before mentioning a few nominees. We know how Tobiko, he has done a good job for this country as a DPP. We know his job did entail praises, Mr. Speaker. There were challenges every single day that his job entails attacking somebody's life. But it was his job, Mr. Speaker. So even if we have if some few has reservations about his job, Mr. Speaker, he had no choice, but he had a duty to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the list.
Member for Samburu North.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in supporting the nominees, the 9 of them. And I want to say that, first of all, as people from Northern Kenya, Pastoralist Parliamentary Group and the entire Pastoralist fraternity, we are very proud of the nominees, all of them, including the ones who come from our region. The President has done us very proud. He has done us something that we didn't expect. But we know that all the 9 have the merit. They have the credentials and the hard work, the experience that is necessary for the job they are going to do. Mr. Speaker, specifically about the Department of Water. That is life for the pastoralist communities who occupy 80% of our landmass. At the present time, we know that there is drought, there is a competition for resources, yet we expect rains. But because of the past experiences, we have not, as a country, we have not been able to harvest runoff water. And I think this particular nominee for water, Simon Shelgoi, will have a big role to play to ensure that we increase the volume of dams, the number of dams, boreholes, to ensure that we get enough water for our livestock and also for our people, even for irrigation. Mr. Speaker, I think having worked in the civil service, most of these, almost all of these nominees, I have interacted with them because some of them had worked in the civil service. They had worked, especially, for example, John Munyes. I knew him in 1994 when he was working with Oxfam. And then again, he became an MP, he became a senator, he became a minister. He worked also in the NGO world. And I think he's a person of high integrity. Being in the oil department, or petroleum and oil, will serve as Kenyans in that region and also in the entire country. For Monica Juma, the ambassador, I think we had an interaction with her in the last parliament. And just as my colleagues have said, I think some of us did not understand her during that time when we were accusing her, when actually we rejected her to become a secretary to the cabinet. I think we have learned more, and I think later when she went to Foreign Affairs and as a PS, we interacted more, and I think we understood her now more. And as gentlemen, you cannot beat a lady twice. It's only once and then you forget about it. So we really fought her last time, and I want to say now that we are going to work with her, and I support her appointment as a nomination as a cabinet secretary for Foreign Affairs. So again, the second is Tobiko, Kireko Tobiko. He's an experienced person. Personally, I knew him from 2000. The year 2000 was when he was working in the commission of the Legal Commission on Constitution, when we were there based in Kencom House, 4th floor. And he's somebody whom I have known now for a long time. He has done a commendable job in the reforms in the DPP's office. He's a very humble person, very approachable, very accessible. So I think I support him for nomination as CS Environment. And that's a very critical office, very critical department for all of this country, especially on the issues of environment, legal issues on environment, and any other issues that pertains to our country and the environment. Honorable Okuri Yatani, this was my colleague. I knew him, I think, in 1984 when he was still in the university. And I know he's somebody who can work hard, who has been working hard. Being a district officer, we work together, and also a colleague in the district commissioner's office, and a governor, an assistant minister, an ambassador. This is he has a wide experience in the public service, and I'm sure going to work in the social protection labor ministry will also add a lot of value to our communities, especially in northern Kenya, where we have poverty. This particular department deals with the elderly people, so safety nets, and I think him being there, he will be able to assist the orphans, the widows, the people with disabilities, because the government has started now a program that can assist elderly people to be able to get safety nets. Then, of course, Professor Kobia.
The procedure which we established in 2013 and which we followed in 2015 with regard to the second batch of cabinet appointees is that even though this is a report of a committee, which in ordinary circumstances and our standing order number 69 would require that We just read the motion as it is and we take the vote. In view of the procedure that we adopted, which we intend to keep and retain, I'll take the vote with respect to each nominee being approved to the docket they have been proposed to. And I think it's a practice that we are likely to be following very soon with respect to some other proposals that are likely to come from the leader of the majority party in consultation with the leader of the minority party. So, honourable members, I put the question, which is that this House adopts the first report of the Committee on Appointment on the vetting of 9 Cabinet Secretary nominees, volumes 1 and 2, for appointment to the position of Cabinet Secretary, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 13, 2018, and pursuant to Article 152, Clause 2 of the Constitution, and the provisions of Standing Order 204, subsection 4, approves the appointment of the following persons as Cabinet Secretaries in the respective ministries. 1, and honourable members, I have ascertained, this is important, that the House has the requisite quorum. 1, Professor Margaret Kobia, Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 2, the Honourable John Munez, the docket, Petroleum and Mining. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 3, Ambassador Dr. Monica Juma, docket, Foreign Affairs and International Trade. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. 4, Ms. Farida Karone, docket, Lands and Physical Planning. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 5, the Honourable Peter Munya, docket, East African Community and Northern Corridor Development. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And those of the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. 6, Mr. Keriako Tobiko, docket, Environment and Forestry. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 7, Mr. Simon Chelugui, docket, Water and Sanitation. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. 8, the Honourable Ukur Yatani, docket, Labor and Social Protection. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? And finally, honour members, finally, number 9, Mr. Rashid Echesa Mohammed, docket, Sports and Heritage. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. Honourable members, therefore, wish to announce to the House that the motion for approval of appointments to the 9 Cabinet Secretary nominees to the 9 dockets as proposed on the order paper is carried, and therefore the ayes have it.
Order number 17, the Computer and Cybercrimes Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2017. Second reading.
Leader of Majority.
Speaker, through your indulgence, I really want to